identity shift.
Hello, everyone.
I wasn't ready.
Welcome. I accidentally hit record prematurely, and Sam was right in the middle of a sentence, but here we are. We're going. Today we're going to talk about the process of moving from a old identification of ourselves into a new paradigm and new energy of who we are now, and just kind of the transition and process of that and what that feels like, and the grieving around that of letting go of who we used to be. Yeah, I'm excited. Cool.
I was both like,
Do you want to start, Sam?
Yeah. So we were talking about how, I guess for me personally, I'm experiencing that shift right now where it's like I feel almost split between what I'm energetically shifting into versus what I'm used to, mindset wise, perspective wise, as well as just how I work through my emotions. And I don't know how in depth I want to go. So I guess we'll just be a little bit vulnerable.
It's all up to you.
Like the split for me personally has to do with like being in relationships. Like I feel like I've spent my entire life in a relationship with somebody. And it was like after a relationship, I would get into another relationship. And it's at the point now where it's like I know what I want and what I don't want in a relationship, and what I'm willing to work through and what I'm not willing to settle for. And so when I meet somebody now, I go through that process of like, this feels good energetically because, you know, like you want that love, you want that connection, you want that person. And then there's like the split of, okay, there's like a bigger perspective to this if this person is not actually aligning with me. And so it's like I can feel my old self like wanting to be codependent and wanting to like pull back into that energy of relying on somebody else for my happiness, or settling with somebody just because I don't want to be alone, versus the bigger perspective now on the other side of me knowing that if it's not meant for me, it's not going to feel good. So it's better to actually just be in my own energy. And it's like a very, like, I can, like, when I meditate, I can feel and visualize the two different perspectives. And it's just so, it can be confusing, but it's also very fun to like,
super interesting.
Push and pull. Yeah.
And be able to witness it consciously.
Yeah.
And recognize like, oh, okay, this is a part of my past. Like this is something that I'm bringing into my present from my past, but this is who I am now.
Yeah, like that energy is obsolete and I know it doesn't serve me, but it's like I'm so used to that version of myself that I'm like, it's almost like mourning her, like letting her go, evolving from her.
Reminding like yourself that you're safe in this new mindset, that like everything will be okay.
Yeah.
I love that. When we were talking earlier, I was actually going to say, I think the biggest thing to remember is when we're going through these shifts, and like your ability to be aware of that is so remarkable, because a lot of people can't get to a point where they know which part of themselves they're projecting onto their present experience, and like what is it that they're holding on to from the past versus like are they aligning to their future. So like your ability to do that is really, really rad.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. I would say like to anybody out there that's going through that process, like understanding like where do you want to manifest from? Do you want to manifest from a place of like lack or a place of your past behaviors, or do you want to manifest from a place that's aligned to your future? So like if you're sitting in a place of needing that relationship or that job or whatever you're continuously going back to out of comfort of your past self, you're going to continue to manifest that experience. 100%. And you won't be able to make room for what the future, what your new alignment or vibrational experience is bringing towards you. You'll attach yourself to the past. So just being mindful of, okay, what is my manifestation point coming from? Is it coming from my fear and my projection of my past experiences, or is it coming from an empowered place of my own alignment and my own ability to say and act towards what I want?
100%. The
Yeah.
bigger picture. I think it can be almost daunting to step into looking at the bigger picture when you're also in a current situation that you know is not serving you. It's like that
Yeah.
little step of taking a leap of faith and trusting in the universe and trusting especially in yourself more so than anything else, because at the end of the day, you're the one making the decision and you're the one that's going to go through the process and the journey from when you make that decision to when you see what you want come into fruition.
Totally. I would say though, like one of the best feelings is when you make that choice for yourself, regardless of what will happen, and then it ends up feeling and working out really well,
It's
you
a
know,
big
and
boost.
yeah, and like you're constantly building that relationship to yourself through your intuition and through trusting your own desires, right? Like you're now telling yourself and reassuring yourself as well as energetically the universe, like I'm worthy for what I actually want. And when you make that choice, that distinctive choice of like, I know that I want more, or I know that there's more out there for me to experience, like there's no other choice but then to attract that. You know, I remember honestly, like when I was in my relationship with my ex for 6 years, like I was at the point where it's like, oh my gosh, like I feel like there's more out there for me. I feel like I'm not experiencing everything that I'm meant to be experiencing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was meant to be or what was going to happen, but I had no freaking idea that I was going to go through this like a spiritual awakening like a month after we broke up. Like I didn't, that was not something that I thought of. And at the time, like I couldn't even imagine, I couldn't imagine what my future had held. I just know that it didn't feel right anymore. And I followed that. And then now it's led me here. So it's like, it's crazy how in the moment it can seem so nuts that you're like not continuing in a certain circumstance that once was so great. But in the long run, like you just don't, you can't, at that moment, your mind can't comprehend the reality that you're creating for your future. So it's big, it's massive.
You just know it's time to move. And if you don't move, the universe will make it so uncomfortable for you. Because I remember being in a position where it was like I knew I needed to move. I needed to move on. I needed to let go and start fresh. But I could I'm so stubborn. Like I'm so stubborn with myself where like I will feel the energy and like, no, I'll just keep pushing. And I'll push and push and push until the point where it gets so uncomfortable that I have absolutely no choice but to move, which I find so interesting that you can almost have a relationship with yourself like that, where you are like, you're being stubborn with yourself over what you know is for your higher good. It's just so,
it's terrifying.
yeah.
Well, another part of it though, too, is like, we have that conscious free will of like, oh, do I truly believe that I want more? Or like, can we get to a place that we can say, oh, like there's more to life that I want to experience? Because if not, like not everyone will go through that resistance aspect of it. People might just choose to stay where they are. And like that's just their experience. And that's okay too. I think you know, those are the people that may be in a position of not actually knowing what life can hold with outside of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's okay.
I feel like
it's terrifying the first time you take that leap of like, I don't know what the heck's gonna happen, but I'm going. Like it's not an easy place to get to, and it's not an easy place to trust yourself enough to take that step.
It's almost like building a skill or building a muscle in your body. Like you have to do it over and over and over again until you know you're at the point where you can recognize the feeling, you recognize the energy, and then you're able to move accordingly because you've experienced that type of energy before.
100%. It is really building a connection with yourself at the end of the day, just as you would with anybody. Like, it's just interesting.
Blows my mind, as do many things.
There's too many things. I think I was editing parts of my book yesterday, and one part that comes to mind is that we so easily trust other people's opinion of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they tell us, oh, like this and this and this and this, and I even like as an intuitive reader, like I experience this too, because I very much am like, oh, this would be a really good idea, right? And it takes a level of trust for people to take and be able to receive what I'm saying, and not all people are going to be able or desire to act on the things or the messages that I'm giving, which is completely okay. But I always wonder, like, what can we do to change the narrative within us, that instead of, not that we shouldn't trust other people, but in a way that we can trust ourselves more to create the story that we want to live, rather than experiencing life in the narrative that other people have told us that we should live, or have told us is more comfortable or more worthy, or because we so easily trust their opinions over our own. And
Which
I think
is so
that's
interesting.
mm-hmm.
Why do we constantly look for others outside of us to be our signal translator instead of us? Like we should be our own compass.
Yeah, that's the goal, but that's a relationship you have to build, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key, is like we don't learn how to have that initiative in building a connection to ourselves. No one teaches us that.
No, we're too busy learning about shapes.
And how to please other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Conform, how to fit in.
Yeah, like what is approved from in the eyes of other people. And I think, I don't know, like that's something that one of my missions is to explore that and help people find that ability within themselves to connect so deeply with themselves that they understand that anything in their life that they want is possible, regardless of what the people that their ancestors that came before them, or the people that they're surrounded by, regardless of their circumstances. They're in a place where they can have that autonomy and that energetic sovereignty to be able to make those choices for themselves in their reality, and not be scared and not be intimidated by what will happen when they make that choice, But yeah, it's tricky, and it is to balance that.
Mm-hmm. And even just on the topic of not conforming, like I was around a couple people that I hadn't seen in a very long time earlier this week, and we were just kind of sharing not similar experiences, but our own individual experiences about how life has been since we left high school. Just my experience was so different from their experiences that I had to step back and remind myself that it was okay that it was different. Because for a second I was like, oh, I'm feeling like very anxious that like that is not that's not like how my path is looking whatsoever, which I find super interesting that is a part of something that we have to conquer.
Yeah, totally. And like back to what you were saying earlier, just like the grieving process of that, of like, wow, like I think it's tricky because at every moment you're every part of you. It's like your past versions of yourself still live inside you. They're just empowered in a different way.
Yeah.
But recognizing that you're not making choices the same way that you used to, one, like, is an exciting experience. It's also difficult to come to that conclusion because you're almost relearning how to do life.
Yeah.
And how to live in this new space and how to live in this new reality and timeline, and like the shifts that occur in that, because it's like, you're like, well, I used to just do that, or I used to just like react to this like anyone would. And now you're like, oh, well, that's not who I am anymore. And
Like you sense it, at least for me personally, like I'll sense how I would normally react. Like it's there, but it's like, it's not, I feel it, but I don't, how do like I don't embody it. It's like I've
Yeah.
embodied a different version of it, but it's like, it's still there.
Yes.
I'm conscious of it. I feel it. I think it, but I don't give it any power. I don't feed into it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah. It's really cool because it's like we get to then love that part of ourselves in a way that we couldn't when we were that person.
I think it'd be really cool too. Like, I would love to hear people's experiences about, examples of situations of like where they've felt that, where like
Mhm.
something has happened and they've felt that pull towards the bigger perspective. And then they've also felt that pull of the old version of themselves, like being like, hey, I'm still here. Like, let's go.
I think that happens though any moment like we're triggered consciously.
Mhm.
Like if we're conscious of our triggers and that happens, I think automatically we have one of those experiences where we're like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is from the past, Kate, but I'm not that person anymore. So this is how I'm going to respond.
Mhm.
And it just maybe because as you practice it, it becomes more automatic and maybe not so noticeable.
Mhm.
But I remember for myself, like as those started to happen, I had to train my brain to do that. Like I'd get triggered. I'd be like, okay, how am I going to respond to this? Like, how am I actually going to align to who I am as a person and not my ego? Like, how am I going to take soul alignment rather than ego alignment? And it became this like conscious exercise. And then eventually just because you keep practicing it, it becomes more of a an automatic response sort of thing. But
Something that you have to consciously work yourself through anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there are some points um like for instance with my family, I've gotten so comfortable in that practice of communicating with my family that that feels a bit easier now in terms of like I've been around them enough. I've been in the situations often enough to know the energy that I'm going to experience and like how my higher self would like to respond and wants to respond versus how my wounded self would want to respond. And I worked through that like the whole year I lived at home. That was exactly what I was working through.
Mm.
Was like I went in there and I was triggered AF about everything. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, like I can detach myself from this situation and I no longer have to deal with it.
Mhm.
So, but to think about that, like it took a year to get to that point. So like it's not something that we should just be able to do, right? Like
It's a process.
yeah, like I always talk to the kids that I coach about practice and like why we keep repeating the same thing over and over again, even if we understand the basics of what they're doing. We still practice to put it all together. And like in sports, that's a really common idea. That's a really common thing to talk about is, oh, we go to practice. Oh, we practice shooting. Oh, we practice cartwheels, whatever, whatever. But we don't think of that in mental health situations where we have to practice sitting with our emotions. We have to practice meditation. We have to practice making time for ourselves or communication between partners. Like those are things that we instantly feel like we're either good or bad at when that's not really the case. It's just like we've never been taught that. So it becomes something that we just have to continuously learn from. And we make mistakes. But
And accepting that it's okay that we continuously make mistakes when we're trying to put it into practice.
yes, yeah, for self-forgiveness, forgiveness of those that we love when they're trying to do the same thing.
I really want that cup.
It's cute, right? It's like summer vibes. I have so many of them. I have like Florida, I have like Las Vegas, I have Tennessee. I don't know. My mom thinks they're really cute. And because I used to work at Starbucks, she was like, oh, like I'll buy you all these cups. And now I just have them in my cupboard.
What are you drinking? I didn't even ask you.
Earl Grey tea.
Oh,
I'm not a coffee drinker.
I have a coffee problem. We're working through it though.
Yeah. We just continue to add more milk, you know.
Less espresso, more oat milk.
Yeah.
It's not even like it's the taste. It's not even the caffeine. It's the taste and the aesthetic of it. I'm like, ooh,
It's a vibe.
yeah, it's like a vibe when I'm reading, when I'm chilling.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to share, Sam?
No, I think that's it.
I love that. Well, thanks for the idea, the
Yeah.
topic. Thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate you. Please find us on social media at Maria B. I am raising my prices for my readings. So if you're wanting one, now would be a really good time to book. And there will be some changes. I'm going to add some things and whatnot. So keep an eye out for those posts. What about you, Sam?
Right now I'm focusing a lot on Reiki. So I'm going to be doing more Reiki sessions out of my apartment. I'm doing $40 a session, and a session is an hour long. So if you have any questions or have any interest, you can shoot me a message through Instagram.
At Samalama208 with 2 A's.
Yes, 2 A's. I'm going to change my username because
Yeah.
it's definitely a complex one, and I get a lot of questions about why it's Samalama. And to be quite frank, I have no answers.
It's cute.
It's cute. It's definitely a vibe.
The vibe. All right. We will talk soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.